The grief gene triggers pathways for depression, heartache, and anxiety. Lincoln genetic markers then modulate these effects.
And it's good camera lens there too. Well, Florence Williams, welcome to the Edge broadcast, man. We were, just before you come on here, we were singing "How Can You Mend a Broken Heart" by the Bee Gees.
Perfect.
And then we had what we call a bear report. He gives us encouraging news for the week, talking about a little boy who was at a Blake Shelton concert, and he's getting heart transplant. So he called him upstage and sung with him. So we're all about the heart tonight. And I've never heard anybody equate heartbreak with science or put them in the same sentence. But I think tonight we might be doing that.
Absolutely. So I became heartbroken really for the first time in my life. When my marriage ended. It was about 5 years ago. And I had always thought that heartbreak was a metaphor, that mostly it was something in your head. It was a big emotion. And I was really stunned when I registered that pain so strongly in my body. I knew there was so much art around heartbreak. There was so much popular music. There was so much poetry, tragedies and plays. But where was the science? I wanted to know why this was happening to me and what was going on and how I could feel better.
Well, let me see. I don't think anybody that's watching this program's ever had heartbreak, so you might be alone in on that issue there. But I can say probably people may have had multiple heartbreaks. And so there's the question right there. Is it possible once you have a heartbreak to get it repaired and then break it again? Could this end up to be a constant cycle?
It can be. It depends on your luck, I guess. But, they say that a real big heartbreak only happens once or twice in your life, maybe. Mm-hmm. And yet, for such an important big event that so many of us go through, we really don't know how to handle it. There's no sort of public ritual for it. There are no kind of standard set of protocols. People feel like they're going through it alone. Even though it is such a universal emotion, it feels very singular when it's happening to you, and it feels lonely, and which is part of, I think, what makes it hurt so much.
Well, there's so many people that have had a heartbreak that Elvis sang a song and said there's a hotel where you go if you have a heartbreak. So, he doesn't really say that when you go to Heartbreak Hotel that your heart gets fixed. It could be like Hotel California. You can check in, but you can never leave. You know what I mean?
Right. That's right.
And so that means a lot of people may be suffering and have suffered with heartbreak for years.
Some people never get over it. According to the scientists, about 15% of people really have a hard time recovering from heartbreak. Most of us will feel the effects of heartbreak, sort of the physical effects, the sort of increased risk of heart disease, increased stresses, increased risk of diseases for about 4 years. Our nervous systems kind of won't really reset for about 4 years to baseline. But that said, there are about 15% of people take much, much, much longer than that.
I noticed in the bio that we had for you on our website, it says that our cells listen to our loneliness.
That's right. I was so concerned about what was happening to my body and to my health, which I felt was really imperiled after I had this big sort of emotional, blow. And so I talked to immunogeneticists, people who specialize in the immune system. For example, at UCLA, we actually looked inside my white blood cells and my transcription factors to find out how my immune system was responding to heartbreak. And it responds like the blood of what he called lonely people, that we have these white blood cells that actually listen to our social state. And when we're lonely, our immune systems kind of shift their priorities and they change the way they behave, which is really weird because you would think when you're really sad, you need your immune system to be working well for you. You don't need to get sick on top of feeling sad. But unfortunately, our nervous systems don't really know the difference between being sort of abandoned out on the prairie or out on the savannah and being circled by hyenas, or being rejected in love. they treat it the same way. And so your immune system kind of gears up for battle. It's preparing in some ways for a flesh wound, as if you're about to be attacked by a predator. And so that's why you put out more inflammation. The problem is that at the same time you're putting out more inflammation, because your immune system can't do everything, it's actually putting sort of less energy into fighting things like viruses. And of course, if we're lonely or heartbroken for months and months or years on end, then we're facing chronic inflammation, which we know leads to a whole bunch of health problems.
And just joining us on the program tonight in our live chat, Jim Shook, Jane Meadows, Babu, and Max Vogan. If anyone has a question, put it in the live chat. If you're watching on the YouTube channel, the chat is on the right. If you're watching the program on the left, the chat is on the left upper, and these questions will come to me. Well, Florence, I don't know if you looked at the website, but we have a poll question. We always do, whatever the topic is that we discuss with the guest. So tonight's poll question related to you: how can you mend a broken heart? How apropos on that one. The answers are they can seek God, ignore it ever happened, it can't be fixed, mine's never been broken, get a replacement, or there's no such thing. Right now, it says seek nature's God, 50%, 25% just say ignore your broken heart, and then 25%, and we got a problem here, me and you are going to have to work on this, 25% says it can't be fixed. So hopefully we'll find some kind of remedy on that. Now, the get a replacement, I'm assuming that means Amazon. If you need a heart or something, maybe get it, get it on Prime, maybe next day air, something like that.
Or you get it overnighted.
Well, yeah, so next day air there too, secondary poll there too as well. And by the way, the people watching the program, just a quick yes or no, be honest, has your heart been broken? And you can say yes. And if you feel like multiple times, say yes, 3, 4, the number, or yes 1, yes 2, yes 4. Some of you, yes 10 or 12, you know that, so just go ahead and admit it. Just real quick, so we can just let the guests know that others have had some heartbreak too as well. And I think we have all had heartbreak, so let's just be honest about that. So, but in your heartbreak, did you feel physical pain?
I did. Yeah, I definitely did. I felt my chest was sort of tight and constricted. I actually had some heart fluttering going on, like palpitations. My eye was twitching. But mostly my symptoms were like a little more diffuse than that. They involved things like not being able to sleep well at night. I lost a lot of weight that I didn't want to lose. I felt just really on edge, really agitated, but also exhausted at the same time. And eventually, with me, my pancreas started acting up. And I actually got diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, which is type 1 diabetes.
Right now we have a graphic up, and it shows really, it's not even funny for that matter. I mean, it's how people break up, usually with their cell phone, Florence. And and I think some people say if they find a love or whatever, then a lot of times they do get something called being ghosted. And I think it's where, and I'm not an expert in being ghosted, but I think it's where you text somebody and then never hear back, as if you never existed. And so there's heartbreak, and I don't know how much we want to talk about, say, a person that wants how he's 50% or whatnot, but it seems that if there is a heartbreak, that one of the two is going to want to hit that wound a few times, not just to break your heart, but to go in there and say, "Oh, your heart's broken," and get a little enjoyment. Does that go on, or am I imagining things?
Well, that's certainly what it feels like to the person who's dumped. So the person who's dumped becomes very sensitive to rejection and sensitive to social pain, and may even imagine that the other person is trying to hurt them even more than they are. Typically, it's true that one person wants the breakup a little bit more than the other one, sometimes a lot more than the other one. And so the one who's left behind can feel really, really rotten. We're a hypersocial species. We are supposed to feel safety in numbers. We're supposed to attach really strongly to each other. And we're really, really sensitive to social cues. Like when someone says, "You know what, I like this person better than I like you," or "I just don't like you anymore. I don't love you anymore." For us hypersocial animals, that really stings. We do not like to hear that.
All right, taking a look in the live chat, the question I just posed earlier. So I'll just run through them real quick in case you're not looking. Okay, so Trudy and Treasure said yes. Friends Radio got to number 3. Okay, thank you, Friends, for being honest there. Cassarelli says 3. We've got another one here says it hurts bad. Yes, twice divorce. Oh, this one's bad. I'm sorry about this one. Times 10 plus. I guess they quit counting after the plus. We got yes 3. We've got yes 2. I'm not going to call out names, although everybody can see. Of course, the live chat's like a family. Everybody knows. Currently says 4. I just throw one out there for you. And we got 10. Some people say, I'm not in love, so don't forget it. I'm not in... Wait, is that a song? Somebody's put a song line in there. I'm not in love. Yeah, he was. That's how he was singing. This person here says their heart still hurts from 1978. Now here in Indianapolis, we had a giant winter storm that dumped 10 foot of snow. So that definitely, I don't know if he was in Indianapolis when that happened. Hopefully not. Boy, that add insult to injury. So it looks like a number of people have graciously, and I think they've always said the healing can start by sharing your experiences rather than keep them in. Is there anything to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I found that to be true. Like I said, it feels like a lonely experience when you're going through it. But it's very helpful to reach out, talk to people about your heartbreak, hear about other people's heartbreaks. In fact, for the reporting of this book, I went to visit a museum in Croatia, in Zagreb, called the Museum of Broken Relationships.
Wow.
And this museum is filled with sometimes amusing objects that people have sent in that represent their relationship or represent their heartbreak. So, people will send in a transistor radio that their love gave them, when they met them on a beach. And then when they broke up, they didn't know what to do with this radio. It came to symbolize their relationship. They donated it to the museum, and then they wrote a little paragraph about their relationship and what went wrong. And when you walk through this museum and you see all of these objects kind of beautifully lit on display, you read these little paragraphs, you begin to understand that this is really a very common human experience. And there's a lot of comfort, I think, in knowing that so many of us, almost all of us, go through it.
All right, I've got questions coming in here. Let's see. Question is for Southern Boy. It says, I've been to a graveyard lately and noticed husband and wife die within 2 years of each other. Did they die of heartbreak?
Yeah, often that is the case. In fact, there was an epidemiologist, so a scientist who I think in the early 1800s went around and did exactly that. He looked at gravestones from married people and found that very often they would die within a year of each other. And we know that because the immune systems are really responsive to stress and to grief, it's true that you become less able to fight certain diseases. But we also know specifically that the heart itself is not just a metaphor for love. We know that the heart literally can break after a big emotional blow. So there's a condition called Takotsubo cardiomyopathy, and about 5% of heart failure is because of this. It's not due to the normal reasons for heart failure, which is a blockage in an artery. Takotsubo cardiomyopathy. I can say it several times really fast. Okay. It's a Japanese word. It's named after a lobster pot. So it's not caused by a blockage in the artery. It's caused by so many stress hormones in the face of grief flooding your heart that one of the quadrants of the heart, the left ventricle, balloons out, can't pump anymore. And you end up in the hospital looking like you're having a heart attack. And in fact, 5% of people will die from this. 20% of people will go on to have an increased risk of heart failure after that. But that's just one of the reasons that your heart might seize up and literally fail after the death of your partner or your loved one.
Okay. Put your way first says Florence, is getting COVID vaccine breaking people's hearts?
Definitely not.
Okay. All right. Freely Speaking says, is the sound of silence nature's blanket to heal the brokenhearted?
That's a good question. I found from the research in this book that experiencing nature can be tremendously comforting. We know from a lot of studies that the sound of bird song The sound of sort of gently flowing water, sound of gentle rain, sound of gentle wind, these things can really help calm our nervous systems, provide a sense of comfort. I love your background there. That's beautiful. Oh, I think that's me. Um, that's me looking at the river. And I've done a lot of research looking at the science of awe, that when we experience something beautiful or mystical, it may feel almost spiritual to us, it helps us feel less lonely because we feel more connected to the world around us. We feel more connected to nature. We may feel more connected to people that we're experiencing this with, or to our communities. And it can be a real antidote to heartbreak, to be open to this kind of beauty and this kind of awe. I don't think we hear that very often as a cure for heartbreak. So I'm really happy to spread the news on that one.
Very interesting on that. All right. We have this question here from Fringe. Says, why is it you never get over your first love? It's really strange.
Oh, I think a lot of us do get over those first loves. Some of our first loves are, maybe not the finest specimens. But I think that when we're young, we're really impressionable. Science has told us that the music that we loved when we were teenagers, the books that we loved when we were teenagers, we remember those things more strongly because our brains are just so open to the world around us. Our brains are growing. And for some of us, that's true with our first loves as well.
All right. Tonight we have on our Newsmaker line is Florence Williams. We're talking about the science of heartbreak. And of course, you went through a period of merging, I suppose, science and self-discovery. So did you have to ask yourself some pretty hard questions that you didn't want to answer?
Oh, yeah. Heartbreak will do that to you. I think it sort of tears you down to the studs. You can't rely on your usual, walls around you. The emotions just come so fast and so hard that you can't really deny them. It's very hard to stuff them down. At least it was for me. I would just feel that pain. I would cry every day for a little while anyway. And it really made me wonder about my emotional intelligence. Why wasn't I more in touch with these emotions to begin with, these highs and these lows? Because as sad as I became in heartbreak, the weird thing is I also became really open to feeling incredible joy and happiness. And that really surprised me. Could those two emotions exist at the same time? And it turns out that they could. And in fact, I actually really liked feeling big emotions because it made me feel more alive. And now, 5 years after my heartbreak, I feel like I know so much more about who I am because I was able to say, I'm really vulnerable. I'm a mess. I need to reach out to my friends. I need my friends to help me. I feel like it actually made me a better friend and a better person by the end of it.
To the viewer's question, there's also that you talk about the first love. What about this business that says time heals all wounds? Is that true? Is that a truism?
It's largely true. But as I said, for 15% of us, it's not true. 15% of us will go on to suffer for a long, long time. And, even with the average time of about 4 years to heal from a long marriage, when that splits up, I think there are things we can do to kind of speed that up a little bit. You can't speed it up 100% or 90%, but maybe you could speed it up by about half or 25%.
Well, from the Bee Gees standpoint, they asked the question, "How can you mend a broken heart?" Well, they never really answered, so I guess a lot of them's got some broken hearts. But on the other hand, talk about the music genre of course, singing about love and broken heart. I mean, every country song out there is going to have somebody's broken heart. But Rascal Flatts said that in his song, God bless the broken road that led me straight to you. And so he's indicating that your broken road of heartbreak is a path that either you're supposed to walk or designed to walk, intended to walk, but it's going to lead you somewhere. So have you, which camp are you? Are you in the camp where how can you ever mend it? Or the camp says there must have been a purpose? Well,
I wouldn't have been inspired to write this book, I think, if I thought there was no way out. I really have a hopeful message, which is that there is a way out.
Mhm.
There are many, many wise people, many spiritual leaders across many different traditions who say you can't really learn how to even be a wise person. And you can't learn how to help others unless you yourself have suffered. That suffering is, in fact, a path to some sort of enlightenment and the ability to help other people. And I really believe that now.
Okay. Well, let me just pop something up on screen real quick. I'll get out of the picture here. We were talking about whether you're supposed to be on that road. This is Psalms 34:18. It says, "The Lord is nigh unto them that are of a broken heart." So it appears from the Holy Writ that your broken heart is not gone unnoticed by the Creator. Would you agree or disagree with that statement?
Well, I think that when you experience a broken heart, eventually it can make you feel much more open to all kinds of possibilities. It can make you more sensitive to your own spirituality. Absolutely. I do believe that.
Okay, let's get this question from Shawanakia. It says, "I've heard that singing with others increases oxytocin.
Oxytocin.
Okay, you know the word, excellent. And it can help you heal. Now, if that's true, I don't know if you watched our pre-show before you came on, but we were singing. I put karaoke up there with How Can You Mend a Broken Heart? So we were all singing. So
Yeah.
I'm hoping people were increasing whatever how's that word?
Oxytocin.
Okay, oxytocin. Is that a truism? Does that help heal the heart?
Well, oxytocin is a neurotransmitter,
Right.
and it can reinforce feelings of attachment, feelings of love. Typically, humans and other mammals will generate more oxytocin when they're looking into each other's eyes, if they're touching each other. Sometimes you're even by petting your dog, you can release some oxytocin. And certainly singing and dancing and being in your community, expressing joy, is going to release a lot of happy hormones. So serotonin, maybe some oxytocin. And what oxytocin does is it actually directly counteracts the effects of stress hormones. So the more oxytocin you have flowing, the less cortisol you're going to have messing up your nervous system.
Well, let me throw another question out to the viewers right now. So we asked the question sort of a historical sense, but does anybody watching the program have a heartbreak, going through heartbreak right now? Just doesn't be just a yes right there, unless you're got 2 or 3 things, relationships going on, they're all broken. I guess you could say 3, and some people probably do. But if you're having it right now, just put a yes in there. That'd be good right there. Max Vogan says, "Does an excellent lover help with heartbreak?"
It depends on your personality. So if you're ready for a new lover, if you're ready for a rebound, absolutely. Yes, because as I said, human touch, physical connection is going to help release some oxytocin. It's going to help calm your nervous system down. There's actually a scientific study showing that rebounds can improve and increase your self-confidence, can increase your self-esteem, can help you separate from the person who broke your heart. But you need to still feel safe. So hopefully you're having a rebound with someone you trust, someone who feels like they're not going to further hurt your heart.
Well, and one of my favorite movies, Letters to Juliet. This lady sent a letter in, elderly lady. She sent a letter in, and about her broken heart, and she lost her first love, and it went to some group that looked at the letter, and she lost her love, and she wanted to find it. So this letter went to these people, and they went looking for her first love. And in the end, though it was years later, she eventually found her love, and her broken heart was healed. So to me, in that movie, Letters to Juliet, there's still hope. If your heart's broken, that even later in life, way later, that your heart could be mended.
Yeah, I think that's right. Our human brains they're built for love. And as much as they can be hurt and our hearts can be broken, if we allow ourselves to kind of, open our emotions back up and try to connect, with other people, that love may happen just on its own.
Well, we've got a couple people that were brave enough and honest enough, and I noticed one of the things about you, Florence, is that you don't seem to be afraid to just let it out there. I mean, somebody would say, "Well, you're telling your personal stuff." Well,
Yeah.
what do you want? You know, people can be completely torn up inside and say, "Yeah, everything's great," and then that doesn't help anybody. But to be vulnerable sometimes kind of reminds me of a scene in a John Wick movie where, if you've ever seen this crazy show, John Wick is this assassin. He goes into a bar and the waitress says to John Wick, "I've never seen you like that." And he says, "See me like what?" She says, "Vulnerable." So he was going through some stuff and he just lost his love in that. So being vulnerable means sometimes just being completely honest. And, but sometimes you may get an answer by being vulnerable, or just maybe honest could be the same kind of word. So here we go. Let me just say, so the question was, are you going through heartbreak right now? And we've got a yes and no. Got a yes, but Jesus has helped me through it. This is a sad one. This is a sad one. Yes, because my wife sleeps in her own room. Totally sucks. Hate it. That is some honesty right there. Yes, 31 years of marriage ending, and you just went through, what was that, 25? I think you said.
Yeah.
And man, it's not fun. It is not fun. And the pain. And here's this, it's like breaking your own heart when you're the one who ends the relationship. So, man, hearts are breaking constantly, and it seems like it's part of the travel of the travail. Travail might be a better word, of life, that you're going to get it. But when somebody asked a question earlier, though, by the way, let me answer this about Florence. They said, well, why did they die? My grandparents died within 3 days of each other.
Wow.
And here's a sad story. What happened was, Grandma died on the couch, and I said 3 days. 3 days is not right. It was 7 days. And for 4 days, Grandpa was on his knees attending to her when she's already deceased. He wouldn't move. Finally, they had to take him to the hospital, and then he died. So, man, I mean, they didn't know anything other than being together, and it's so sad.
But that's a beautiful story, too.
Well,
I mean,
do tell.
they really were so connected to each other that they couldn't imagine being apart.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's a good way to go.
Okay. All right. Well, I didn't say it was a bad way, but I mean, it's a sad way. I mean, I don't know. I agree with what you're saying. All right.
When we live next to a partner for that many years at a time, our bodies actually sync up. So, if you're lying in bed next to someone for years, your heart rates are going to line up. Your stress levels or your cortisol levels get released the same amount in the mornings and the evenings. Your respiration rates are the same. Mm-hmm. When that person suddenly takes off or disappears, your body registers that as a very alarming event. You notice it deep into your cells, into your brain, and it can make a huge difference in your immune system.
All right, let's take a look at another great word here. This is Psalms 147:3. It says, "He healeth broken in heart and bindeth up their wounds." And since we were saying, does time heal? Or they say time heals all wounds, and here it's basically said that God is the one that heals the wound. But let me ask you something, Florence. When the spiritual guidebook says that God heals the wounds, and without ascribing it to God, say for those that are kind of either way on that, would, for instance, finding out how to get your heart broke or healed from breaking, the damage that's done, get healed from that. Each person may have a different way that comes into their life that brings that to bear. Maybe another relationship that's way better, or removal of the one that's damaging your heart. But one could say, again, back to Rascal Flats, God bless the broken road. So it looks like the healing can come in a variety of ways through our life, that you may get your heart broke, but something in your life. I mean, is your heart still broken, by the way?
No, my heart's all better.
Okay.
I mean, it's still, I don't think the heart.
No more boo-boo?
You don't have complete closure, right? You're always going to have a scar. You're always going to have a little wound, mm-hmm. But it's part of it becomes a part of who you are, and you can learn to grow around and from those wounds. Mm-hmm. I will say I have kind of a little 3-part plan to heartbreak recovery.
Okay.
And it's general enough that I think it can apply to a lot of people. But the first thing is when you're still in the sort of the shock and stunned phase of a heartbreak, you need to figure out how to calm down, because if you're still in that kind of fight or flight zone, you're not going to do a lot of healing.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to do whatever's going to help you relax and calm down. And then the second piece is to find some connection. So either connecting to other people, like your friends and your family, people you can trust and open up to, that's going to make you feel a little bit less lonely, but also connecting, as we said, to the natural world, or connecting to the parts of yourself that are spiritual and that help you feel less alone. And then the third part is finding some purpose and meaning from your painful experience. What's the story about how this pain is going to help you move forward? Ultimately, those are the things that are going to make your body and your heart feel better.
Okay, let's get to another question over here. Which is worse, having your heart broken or breaking your own heart?
Ooh, that's a good one. They both sound pretty terrible, don't they? But I think if you break your own heart, how do you recover from that? That's a hard one, because then you have to rebuild your relationship with yourself, which may be harder than it sounds, but not impossible. People do it. People do it all the time. And in fact, if you can grow from that, you can probably really learn a lot and help other people.
Mm-hmm. So if your cells are listening to your heartbreak, what happened? Could one watch a cell under a microscope and see a change? Or could
Yes.
you could. Go ahead. Describe, what would they see? What would somebody see?
Yeah, well, what you would see, and we did this with I had my blood analyzed at a lab at UCLA. You can't do this in your doctor's office. But I had a geneticist looked at my transcription factors. So those are the signaling molecules that tell your immune cells how to behave. So what you can do is you can analyze the blood to look for those transcription markers, and they're the markers that are either going to upregulate your white blood cells for inflammation, or they're going to downregulate your blood cells for fighting viruses. And you can see that in a lab, and that's the marker of loneliness. How much inflammation you're putting out, that's loneliness. So in fact, there's a psychologist who said to me, there's an inflammation story of divorce. And that's the story that I wanted to hear.
Okay, we have this question here. It says, is it true when one commits infidelity that they're not just breaking the heart of their partner, but ultimately they're breaking their own heart themselves?
Well, I think if you're betraying a trust, then there's probably going to be, for you, some moral anguish in that and some ethical anguish. You may feel like you've done something wrong. That's going to generate a lot of guilt, potentially. Could be hard to deal with. But a lot of couples survive this kind of betrayal. People learn to forgive each other. People learn to forgive themselves. Sometimes you can move on from this, and sometimes you can heal from it.
Okay. For those of you just joining the broadcast, we have on our newsmaker line Florence Williams. If you have a question, you can put your questions in the live chat on both the website or the YouTube channel. The show will be edited and uploaded to YouTube and to Apple Podcast after the show, so be sure to look for that. Physically, they say that the heart, if you had a heart transplant, you would have the memories. People have had the memories of the donors. What if the person of the heart transplant you get just went through a heartbreak? Would that heartbreak transfer to you as well?
That's a great question. You'd have to get a cardiologist in here to ask that one. Not so sure. I don't know anyone who's had a heart transplant. Do you?
No, but we talked about it during the bear report. Little boys going to be getting one, so we'll see. I guess we couldn't see about that. I mean, I don't think little children can get their heart. Well, maybe they can. Can little children get their heartbreak too?
Sure. There are all kinds of heartbreak. Any kind of broken attachment. So, you can have broken attachments to your parents. You can have broken attachments to your landscape, to your home. Look at all these, communities and neighborhoods that are on fire now. That's certainly a kind of heartbreak, no question.
Well, to that point there, and I've shared this on the show before, the power company came through and they told me that tree 1, 2, and 3 are going to be cut down, which I planted and watched grow. I'm a prolific tree planter, hundreds of trees, love trees, and I knew they were going to be cut down.
I'm sorry.
And they're going to be ground to dust. And I thought, for one thing, I want the body, and with the body of the tree.
Yeah.
But before they died, before they got ripped to shreds in the shredder, I went and told them. And somebody say, that's wrong. But I felt like I want to talk to them, and I just feel like I feel like there's life in rocks. Okay, so that doesn't mean I'm worshiping nature or rocks, but I believe that a lot of things have life in them. It is proven that if you talk to plants, that you can alter the way. And many people, you can watch two plants grow together, and you'll see them. They'll grow the opposite direction because they don't want nothing to do with the one right next to them. You can see they're trying to get away from it. And they can't because they're stuck in the root. It's kind of like Lord of the Rings when the trees go running around through there. But anyway, so no, I did talk to the trees, and I did take their bodies, and I did spread them around other places. So
we as humans, we're really capable of being attached to other species. There's no question. Look at our pets, right? Mm-hmm. You can have the same thing with a tree. Why not?
Okay. All right. What we got here? Well, we've already talked about these questions here. You gave us three ideas about how to fix a broken heart. How do we prevent the heart from being broke?
Oh boy, never being in love. But who wants that? That's not worth it.
No,
I think that we can learn how to treat each other's hearts better. And that can start in childhood by teaching our kids emotional intelligence, teaching our kids how to have healthy expression of their emotions, teaching them how to communicate their emotions and their needs. And I think maybe we could prevent a lot of marriages from going bad if we teach our kids from the beginning how to talk to each other and how to love each other.
Okay. Well, Florence, you've been smiling through this interview so far, and that indicates to me a good heart. But we were just talking about the children. They need to see smiles, but these days they're not allowed to see smiles. As you know, I'm going with that one. They can't see people's facial expressions. They can't see smiles. Is this going to permanently damage these children?
Kids are very perceptive. Kids can tell your emotions. Even our pets can tell our emotions, right? I think kids have no trouble telling when their friends are running around happy, when they're laughing. You can hear them. You can see their eyes. I'm not that worried about the facial expressions. I'm more worried about people feeling isolated and people being isolated. So I think in these times, it's really important for our kids to have meaningful connections with other kids, meaningful connections certainly with their peers. That's what I worry about more than the actual facial expressions, because I think the kids can figure out the emotions behind the masks.
Okay, so is it going to lengthen the time of their being able to develop normally?
I think it remains to be seen. Like I said, I think kids are incredibly adaptable. They learn really easily. Their brains learn really easily. I think kids are having a hard time. A lot of kids are having a lot of hard times right now in terms of their mental health. I don't think it's because of the mask wearing. I think it's because, they're not being able to do as many activities as maybe they want to do. They're not being able to play as many sports sometimes as they want to do. But I think they're going to bounce right back. I really do.
Okay, we take a look at the polls to see if we move them polls any. We have how can you mend a broken heart? Number one there is still seek nature's God there, 53% there. Ignore it ever happened, 23%. 15% says it can't be fixed. And then we got 7% that they want to do the Amazon thing. They want to get a replacement. So, I'm sure a lot of people would like to start over. But honestly, I don't know if that's possible. It seems like you're going to have to carry that weight, kind of like the Beatles said, carry that weight a long time.
That's right.
But
you can't just let it go forever. So there's a piece of it that's going to stay with you.
So we had a guest on the program, a doctor from England, who said he has literally cured cancer without drugs, by simply fixing the surroundings, the toxic surroundings of the people that he come in. In other words, I guess he looked at it sort of holistically. I guess that might be the word, but many of them was bad relationships. Toxic relationships were causing cancer. Now, I'm not suggesting that people get rid of somebody in their life that's causing them some grief, because I'm not a psychologist and I certainly wouldn't want to be responsible for that. But on the other hand, toxic relationships do cause sickness. And to that doctor who said he's cured 30,000 of them just by fixing, and some of them, they weren't all relationships, some were their surroundings, where they worked, the pressure they were under, those kinds of things. A lot of them were relationships. So what's your suggestion on when somebody is, say, stuck in a cell busting relationship?
Yes. Well, we do know from some large-scale epidemiology and some studies that being in a very bad relationship is bad for your health. That's true. So the psychologist I talked to about this at the University of Utah said we need to teach people skills how to fix their marriages. And sometimes that can be done and sometimes it probably can't be. But the earlier we start, and like I said, if we start teaching our kids how to talk to each other and how to care for each other's hearts, I think that's going to be a good start. And if we can learn to get along better and improve our relationships all around, that's going to be good for our health.
Mm-hmm. Then we have another scripture here. I think it says, now this goes kind of the Rascal Flatts, all things work together. We know all things work together for good to them that love God. Is spirituality, Florence, a method or a part of healing the heart?
I think it absolutely can be. Really one of the definitions of spirituality is that you're aware of something and connected to something larger than yourself, right? And so that is the definition of an open heart. If you are open to other people, if you're open to the cosmos, if you're open to God, whoever it is for you, that's where your heart wants to be, no question.
Well, if there's a sort of a healing from above, let's say, would that indicate that perhaps maybe some of this heartbreak might be coming from down below, so to speak?
I think humans are very capable of hurting each other's hearts. We don't necessarily need other forces to do it for us.
We're pretty good at that, huh?
At it by ourselves.
That's a human thing, man. We're really good at breaking hearts. But speaking of that, can animals break each other's hearts?
We do know that sometimes you hear these stories, right, of pets who lose their master and they sit by their master's house or by the master's bedside for years waiting for their master to come back. Mm-hmm. I think animals definitely do understand some kind of attachment loss.
No, I can see that, because I mean, man, there's some videos and pictures out there, especially of, say, like military men, where a dog will go to the casket. It is, I'm going to say, one of the pitiful or sad. I don't know how it is. You don't ever want to see that, because that dog is just staying there. He's not going to leave. But that's sort of the human attachment, and obviously this so-called animal is having an emotional response, which seems to indicate that it has a conscious being.
Yeah.
But could another dog break a dog's heart?
Yeah. Well, we see it sometimes. We see it with higher order mammals. We see it with whales. See it with dolphins, see it with chimps, see it with other primates. Mm-hmm. There's definitely grief in those animal populations, especially when their offspring are injured or killed.
Mm-hmm. And then there is the elephant, I believe, which actually has a funeral procession. If they find out that one of their buds is dead, they will literally they call it an elephant procession. They'll go and I've seen the video, they're just so somber, and they're walking, and then I guess they go around the dead elephant, and then obviously the emotion, I think they're probably even recording tears. So, man, Sounds to me like elephants can have broken hearts too as well, Florence.
It sure does.
All right, from Freely Speaking, it says, as a rule, does lust deliver heartbreak as a parting gift? If this how is this how lust deceives?
Not necessarily. No, I think that we have kind of these lust drives in our brains. We also have attachment drives. We have love drives. Um, I think that all of these things can combine in different ways, and no guarantee, no predictability how they're going to work out.
Hmm. Life is like a box of chocolates. Is that what you're saying, Florence?
Yep. You don't really know what you're going to get once you bite into it.
Okay. Siobhan Kia says, Florence, what about a collective broken heart due to severe circumstances in a population?
Yeah.
The collective.
Yeah. So, collective pandemic is certainly causing a lot of collective grief and heartbreak right now for a lot of people. You see, after sort of a major natural disaster. Mm-hmm. For example, I talked about that kind of Takotsubo heartbreak that people get. We see increased rates of that after something like an earthquake or a really deadly tornado. So there can be people experiencing collective grief and collective heartbreak, no question.
So how does the collective get over said collective heartbreak? We never have to get together?
Ways is by acting collectively. So by helping each other out, by going through this together, by sharing resilience as well as sharing grief. All of these things can actually be very healing. Mm-hmm. And by the natural world, after Hurricane Katrina, the community came together and replanted a lot of those trees. After the Joplin tornado, community came together, replanted thousands and thousands of trees. These acts of connecting to nature also made people feel closer to their communities and closer together, and became very important for their healing.
Mm-hmm. So I'm a beekeeper. And in a beehive, all the workers, all of them are female, and the queen, of course, is female. And then they have what's called drones. These are the males, and they sort of mirror society. They don't work. They don't bring nothing to the hive. All they do is bang the queen. That's all they do. So once they do that, they die. And a lot of them still hang around the hive. Now, the rest of the bees, all being female, they don't have any male association relationships in their life. So would they be happier than, say, the queen who has a drone, a quickie basically, and then dies and loses the man? Would the other bees be happier without? So what I'm saying is, would people be better without risking a relationship so their heart would never be broken, or is it worth the risk?
Well, there are a lot of poems about this. There are a lot of sayings and adages about it. My belief is that humans are meant to love. And if we deny ourselves that, we deny ourselves a part of being human. So as much as it can sometimes hurt to lose love, ultimately, love is kind of what it's all about.
It seemed like there was a scene in The Matrix where Mouse said to deny our impulses is to deny what makes us human. So our impulses, like I guess you're suggesting, is that we are born to love, I guess. We're born to love.
There are a lot of ways to define love. So you can be very fulfilled by loving your family, by loving your community, by loving your God. There are a lot of ways to love. There are a lot of ways to be loved. And I think there's a lot of fulfillment to be found even in the absence of romantic love.
Bear says, how do you keep your heart from scarring after it's been broken? Now, all wounds do leave a scar. I got a scar in my hand where I was fishing, and I did a Superman and put a big gash in my hand. So there's a scar there, but the heart gets scarred. Is there any way it can not be scarred from being broken? Can it get wounded without a scar, or is there always going to be a scar?
I would argue that it's okay to have some scars. In fact, I would argue it can make you a better person, for showing up for the people in your life that you still love, because you have more sympathy, you have more empathy, you understand suffering. If you're connected to your own scars to an extent, not so that they're debilitating, but so that you have an understanding of suffering, it can make you more capable. Ironically, having a wounded heart can make you more capable of love. Ultimately, I believe that.
So what if somebody has a broken heart and they can't figure out how to fix it? So let's just say they start eating chocolate, and
Chocolate's terrific.
it seems to me, I've seen some movies with that too, where somebody just starts eating chocolate. So, man, can you replace the wound, the love that you lost, with a love that you love, and then would that make everything all better?
So that's a really interesting question. We know that when humans love humans, or when humans love their pets, we release opioids into opioid receptors in our brains. And in the absence of that, there are other things that land on those opioid receptors and make us feel really good, such as synthetic opioids, such as drugs, maybe a ton of chocolate. So you can replace the bonds of human love with chemical substances. That doesn't mean it's a good idea. It's not going to make you healthy in the long run. But
what if somebody was to lace chocolate with, say, a certain substance? Would that be a healing effect too as well?
Yes, it can be an analgesic effect. It can make the pain feel a little bit less painful. The flip side, though, is that if you're numbing your brain from pain, you're also numbing it from joy. So you have to be really careful how you numb your pain.
Okay. Jim Shook says, Florence, when somebody puts up a wall after their heart has been broken, what could be done to tear that wall down? That's a great question.
Yeah, I think, again, this feeling of connecting to the natural world can help you open your heart again. Feelings of connection to other people can help you open your heart again. Sometimes it's going to be a slow process. You need some patience. Sometimes you can't go looking for it or forcing it. You need to just wait for it. But the more you can look for beauty, and the more you can feel a sense of awe in the universe, the more likely you're going to be able to tear those walls down.
And walls is definitely something that people hide behind after they've been damaged. They go to, they typically, I'm going to say we too. I've done it, go into some heart protection mode.
Yeah.
Once, when it ever happen again. But it is going to happen again. Well, it doesn't have to, I guess. But what if somebody was to find their perfect love? In life, does everyone have a perfect love out there they just haven't found?
I don't believe they do. I think that that's a story that Hollywood tells us. I think that's a Disneyland story. I think that there are probably a lot of potential soulmates for all of us out there in the world. And nobody is perfect, and nobody's going to be your everything. And so that's why we need to learn how to communicate. It's why we need to learn how to accept some flaws in each other, including in ourselves. And then once we've, become more vulnerable with each other, become more honest with each other, accept our flaws, that's where we can hopefully really find, a fulfilling way to move forward. But it's not going to be a Hollywood ending all the time.
So what does science say now? You're connecting science with self-discovery, science with cells, but science as a general rule, do they look at it like spiritual matters? It doesn't exist because they can't duplicate it, so therefore whatever, it's just a chemical imbalance and that kind of thing. Is that the way they look at it, or is anyone in the scientific community coming to an idea that maybe there's something more to this heartbreak or human emotions than just cellular damage or chemical imbalance or toxicity?
Yeah, I think there is an understanding that some of what's out there is mysterious, and science can actually be a pathway to appreciating awe and appreciating the mysterious. So it doesn't necessarily need to, answer every question definitively. But I think that actually through understanding science, sometimes our minds can be blown by how incredible, our bodies are, by how incredible our minds are, by how incredible human landscapes and ecosystems and the outer space, it's all mind-blowing, it's all awesome, and it can all open our capacity for appreciating mystery and appreciating love.
So the Bible says that the life is in the blood, and we're talking about cells, and there's certainly cells in the blood. What if somebody had say maybe gone through heartbreak and then developed immunity, and their cells rebuilt because they were fixed, they were healed, and then what if that person gave a blood transfusion to another person whose cells are being damaged by a heartbreak? Would that person be healed?
Whoa, that's a really wild question. So the way our immune systems work is you can't just, I think, transplant your immune cells to another person and have it completely take over all of your immune system. You can transfer some antibodies, perhaps, transfer some T cells, transfer some B cells. But the way our bodies work is that our immune systems are supposed to listen to our external world. And they're supposed to listen to our emotional state. And that's how our immune systems can really help us. It's just that sometimes it backfires because when we feel lonely, our immune systems think that we've been left out on the savannah by ourselves. And it's not a place where we want to be forever. And no matter how many immune cell transplants you're going to get, your bone marrow is still going to be making new immune cells depending on how lonely you feel.
Well, you mentioned visiting nature as a healing tool. How does the visual of nature heal a cell?
Well, I think when we are calm, our nervous systems will say, there's no threat here. Look at that beautiful green tree. Look at that beautiful clean water. Look at that calm sky. I don't feel threatened right now. In fact, I feel really peaceful. I feel happy. I don't need to put out a lot of inflammation into my immune system, into my body. I can actually just feel really calm and really centered and grounded and healthy right now because I don't need to be in a fight or flight state. I can relax. And nature can really help us get there.
Okay, so me and the wife was out in nature up there at Glacier National Park, and we were on the trail. And, of course, warnings everywhere. Carry your bear spray.
I knew you were going to bring up bears.
And how's that? And so I was in a fight or flight mode the whole time, worried about the bear, and, getting mauled and dragged all through the forest. Did I damage my cells?
No, because actually your cells were really helping you there. They were preparing you for doing a fast action, whipping out your bear spray really quickly, climbing a tree really quickly, maybe playing dead. When your body's alert like that, it's going to save your life. What you don't want is to be in that state for months and months and years through loneliness.
Oh, so it's okay to get into a fearful situation.
Absolutely.
But don't live in it. Don't live in it.
That's right. That stress is going to save your life in the short term. It's great.
Okay, Azur says, Florence, can a person who's had their heart truly broken, truly broken, can it be repaired?
I believe it can. It's not going to look exactly the same as it did before the heartbreak. You're going to be in some ways a different person than you were before the heartbreak. But you can grow from that wound. You can grow into someone who's capable of so much joy and so much love and giving so much to other people. And that's ultimately the most fulfilling thing we can do.
If it's one's purpose or one's design or fate to have their heart broken, and we're talking about the road that we're all on different roads, could it be that it was designed that way so that that a person who's had a broken heart now has empathy and knowledge to help somebody else who's going through a heartbreak? Could that be the purpose why somebody went through a heartbreak and they don't even know it?
Sure. Absolutely. I mean, suffering is a part of being human. And maybe you could make the case that you're not going to be a full human unless you understand suffering.
All right. Southern Boy says, is there any evidence of fasting curing those heartache side effects? It does medically.
I'm not an expert in fasting. My understanding is that it can be helpful in some situations and less helpful in others.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then we have, we're talking about heart things in the good book here. It says in Psalm 73:26, my flesh and my heart faileth, but God is the strength of my heart forever. Evidently, there's some words there that are definitely written for the people who've had their heart broken and said that there's a higher power that is God that right there who is observing the broken heart, and he must have the same empathy that we're talking about maybe once you have a broken heart toward others whose heart is breaking.
I think a strong belief in God and that God is going to take care of you is really going to help you feel less lonely, and then it can really help you with a broken heart.
There seems to be a lot about the heart in the good book, and I think because it seems like it knows a lot about the ways of people in general, and so it does seem to offer hope in that realm. So I'm thinking that might be a good source for people if they're going through heartache to turn to the good book, at least because if you other than another place it says faith comes through hearing and hearing by the word of God. So if you're hearing that or if you're seeing that, then your broken heart, I'm wondering if that is actually written cell repair. Just by reading that, your cells start to get some repair going there.
Absolutely. Anything that's going to get you out of yourself and make you think about how connected you are to other meaningful things in your life is going to be really helpful.
Mm-hmm. So it does seem that it is suggesting that people are going to go through a heartache. So should people resent having to go through heartache? Did you resent the heartache you went through?
I did at first, absolutely, because it's a really uncomfortable feeling. It's miserable. You can't sleep. You're angry at the person who hurt your heart. You're processing a lot of really uncomfortable emotions. It's super uncomfortable. It's easy to feel what one psychologist told me is abandonment rage. There's a lot of raging and regretting and resenting. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. But hopefully, by the end of this long process, I think it's not unrealistic to even come out of it to such a point that you're sort of grateful for the experience. Mm-hmm. And that's when you're really on the other side.
So there is cell damage. Is there any other damage that a broken heart causes?
Well, it depends how you respond to your broken heart. A lot of people respond to a broken heart by hurting themselves. So they drink too much. They just stop exercising. Maybe they don't leave the house. Maybe they become short-tempered with people around them. So that can cause some damage. Mm-hmm. And it takes, I think, a lot of self-composure, to try to not let all of your impulses, run away with you. And then, to the extent that maybe they do, then to do some repair on the other end.
I would go out on a limb and think that a lot of people have holes in their heart. I say holes in their heart. Could be holes in their soul. There's something missing. And then you mentioned alcohol and probably perhaps drugs and that kind of thing. Maybe even sex addiction too. But there's a void in their heart. They call it a void in their heart, and they're constantly trying to fill it with something, but they never can. The heart can never be filled with these sort of temporal things that people get involved with. But if the body is fighting off those things, say, because let's just say that somebody turns to drinking, so now the body is fighting off the drinking, the damage from the alcohol. Well, then, if a heartbreak comes along, the body's now fighting two wars. And isn't it that our body is fighting all these wars is why, say, somebody would have the exact same condition, but they wouldn't be as damaged as another person because they're fighting multiple wars. Suppose they're drinking and they're smoking and they got a lot of hate in their heart, and then their heart gets broken, and another person has their heart broken, and they're not fighting the other wars. is it more likely that the person who's not fighting wars on many fronts is going to have a survivability higher than the other person who's fighting the war on multiple fronts?
I think I followed all that. Yeah, I mean, the more stressed out someone feels, the more wars, as you say, the more wars they're fighting, the higher the risk of health outcomes that are problematic. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, we got somebody says in the live chat that they eat too much.
Yeah.
And I think I asked this question to another guest. I'll ask you. Well, what if I like an Oreo cookie, brings me a lot of joy, but yeah, it can make you fat. So now, and it probably is not healthy. But does the joy of eating that cookie bring me more health benefits than the negative because it's not even real? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. I mean, if there are certain foods that bring you a lot of comfort and are going to help you feel calmer and more relaxed, there can be a place for that. But it's probably not a long-term fix. And we know this because the scientists who are looking at the immune cells are looking at the cells of people who seek a lot of pleasure, such as from Oreo cookies, as opposed to people who seek purpose in their life. They have a big question they're asking about why it is they do the things that they do that mean something to them. It's those people who are going to have a better looking immune system than the ones who really just feel a lot of pleasure.
So I mentioned what seems to be a truism that some people have voids in their soul and in their heart that can't be filled, and they keep trying, and that's why they go from, for instance, if they say maybe start with pornography, and then it gets worse and it goes into pedophilia, and then it gets worse and it goes to bestiality. It gets worse and worse and worse once that as they try to fill that. What do you know that can fill that void where somebody wouldn't have to have these sort of rising to these, and get to where people would hurt themselves even, it get worse and worse. It's escalation. What is it you think that they could fill their heart with instead?
Well, that's a complicated question, and I think it's going to be different for different people. But we know that human connection, real, authentic relationships between people, authentic relationships between people and the natural world, these are things that can help fill, I think, a lot of holes in people's hearts. And I wish that we were teaching our kids to be more connected to the natural world. And I wish that we were teaching them better skills so that they don't feel so lonely when they're growing up.
Well, I think the problem now is, though, if you say you take kids out in the forest, they're going to be on their cell phones. They're going to be looking for a place to sit down, or they're going to be walking down the trail, and they're going to be on their cell phones. So would you be of the mind saying no cell phones allowed on the trail in the forest?
I think that would be a great goal. I think if you say that, you're going to make a lot of kids hate the forest. So I think you have to be careful about how you do it. There actually are some interesting, even potentially some interesting apps or some interesting games that kids can use to sort of get themselves even out the door. Little apps that they can use in nature. They can take photos in nature. Eventually, I would like to see them be able to say, hey, I actually kind of like nature. I like what I'm learning, even if it was my phone that got me out here. And then they can build a real relationship with the natural world such that they can't wait to put their phones down. I've seen kids say they hate their phones. They don't want to be on their phones as much as they are.
Well, that's good to know somebody out there, some kids out there doing that. But that's got to be the exception and not the rule. Isn't it that now there are more kids on social media getting all screwed up? Are these candidates for cellular damage at a heart level?
Well, we know that kids who spend more time on social media may have a higher risk for some mental health problems, like feeling loneliness, feeling anxiety. So I think, the technology is sort of like any other kind of diet. You can't just have all the junk food. You need to have the broccoli, and you need to have, healthy vegetables. So it's okay to have phones and technology, but we also need to understand that we need some limits on that. We need limits on this technology, and we need to get some healthy stuff in there as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say, for every hour you're going to be playing a video game, go play outside for an hour. Go play outside for 2 hours.
There was a scene in Contact with Jodie Foster where Matthew McConaughey says, "We have all this technology, but has it brought us closer together?" And the answer was no. All right. We've got this question here. Southern Boy says, has anyone ever tried toad toxin from the bufo frog? It supposedly makes you have a rebirth experience, eliminating depression and drugs. I guess they like the frog that we had in our background here. So I guess frogs could be helpful. They got some kind of toxin to eliminate depression and drugs. There
is a psychedelic substance that you can derive from not only frogs, but lots of different compounds, and some people find that these are really a sort of gateway to feeling awe and to feeling spirituality, and to, even in some studies, have been shown to help people with post-traumatic stress and with depression. I think it's a field that still needs a lot more scientific study, but it's pretty interesting.
Well, maybe there's something to that story about the prince turning into a frog. I don't know, because it sounds to me like there's some love involved there. All right, Azura says, Florence, can a person who's had true love have a second time around? How many times can a person have true, and that's all caps, true love? And if the love is true, is it a one-time event?
No, I don't think it's a one-time event. I think there are a lot of potential true loves out there. I think it depends on how skilled you are at loving other people and how much they can love you. I think it's like having kids. You don't only love one kid. If you have two kids, you love them both. Mm-hmm. I think we're capable of loving multiple times over multiple years, and it doesn't go away when we get older. We can still love just as intensely when we're in our 70s and our 80s as when we're in our teens and 20s.
So if going back to the cells listen to our loneliness, and then they cause some problems, and I guess if that's the case, do we seek out to not be lonely to reverse the curse of the cell damage?
Yeah, we do. We have a real drive. Some people argue that feelings of loneliness, that it's sort of a signal that our brains put out to tell us how to behave differently, to drive us to seek the company of others. Loneliness is it's kind of a message that our brains are giving us, and so unfortunately, sometimes it can be very hard to sort of break the cycle of loneliness, but it's worth the effort because being lonely is bad for our cells.
So there's a certain thing going out there. It's called mRNA technology, designed to alter the cells. Can the heart be repaired chemically without the use of, say, reversing, going from loneliness to being around people, or going into the forest, or finding your true love? Can it be done through science and bypassing all that?
Well, there are scientists who are studying possible drugs for loneliness. So I don't think we have them yet, but stay tuned. There are some scientists who are looking into it. I'm a little bit skeptical of that. I tend to think we probably need more than just a pill in order to, really fulfill our drive for human connection.
Mm-hmm. To the heart question about trying to fill it, I think the Bible actually says the only person that can fill the heart is Jesus. Having him in your heart. I guess some say that there's a hole that's just where Jesus can reside. So it sounds like our spirits need a defense against a broken heart, sort of a buttress, something that can keep the heart inoculated from the damage that will come. Because if that heart is empty, then that damage is going to come. It's going to hit hard.
Yeah, I think, again, it comes down to feeling some purpose in your life. Mm-hmm. If you can feel purpose, if you can have connection, that's where your cells are going to be the happiest.
Okay, and what's your purpose, do you think?
I think my purpose is communicating. It's helping people feel like they're not as alone, helping people find hope, and helping people learn that their emotions are okay.
So this book here, The Nature Fix, what is in that book? What's it about?
This book is about the science behind why we feel different in different environments, why when we're outside in a pleasant natural environment, we may suddenly feel like some of the stresses of modern life wash away. We feel happier. Mm-hmm. We feel like we have less negative thoughts. We may feel more creative ideas when we're out walking in the woods. Certainly lots of poets and musicians and inventors have come up with their greatest ideas while they're out in the woods. And this really looks at the science behind that. So I talked to neuroscientists. I talked to physicists, people who are putting EEG caps on people's heads and measuring brain waves. What's going on in their frontal cortex as opposed to their sensory brains when they're outside in nature, and super interesting new science coming out on this.
Well, the Holy Writ says that nature declares there is a God. So it seems, and I know I feel close to God when I go out in the nature and see the beauty and thinking, okay, well, there's no way this came out of some primordial soup and just sprung out and all this beauty. I mean, how do we even know it's beauty? Unless there's some kind of spiritual component to nature itself. The ancients of the early Americans referred to it, Benjamin Franklin referred to it as nature's God, talking about the rights of humans. And that's why that was phrased that way in the poll that we have about nature's God. So do you feel more spiritual in the forest, or do you feel more chemically balanced?
Both. I think those two things are related for me. I certainly, when I'm out in nature, here's an example. I was going for a walk in the woods, and I was upset about a conversation that I'd had with someone, and my head was down, and I was just thinking about this negative conversation, thinking about it over and over again, and all of a sudden this giant owl swooped down from a tree and flew right across my path. And my brain just stopped. All those negative thoughts just went away. And all I could think about was that owl. It took me outside of my own head in a way that was so mentally healthy and so beneficial. And it made me think, wow, my problem is not the only thing in the world. There's a lot here. Maybe my problems are not as important as I think they are. It gives you perspective, makes you feel in a healthy way like your ego is really not such a big deal. There's a whole world out there full of beauty and wonder. And what happens when we're just looking at our feet and we're missing out on that?
So why do they say that the owl is wise? Wise old owl. I never figured that one out. He knows something. I don't know what he knows because he never told me.
Yeah, he never told me either.
So you had sort of an experience. So, but then we're talking about a broken heart, which usually comes from a broken relationship, which damages the cells, can cause sickness. And we're talking about ways to heal it. But what about, say, and I mentioned in the first hour about some people like to take that additional stab. They know your heart's hurt and they want to stab you a little bit more, inflict more pain. But what if somebody, say, has unforgiveness and such? Does that cause the same sort of cellular damage that heartbreak does?
That someone has forgiveness or unforgiveness?
Unforgiveness. Or hate, so let's just say even hate. Does that cause the same damage to the heart, or is it a different type, or no damage at all?
I'm not really sure what the science says about that. I think we tend to think, people who are angry are going to have heart attacks and die sooner. And there was some signs a long time ago, I think, about people with so-called type A personalities, sort of hostile, personalities dying earlier. But I actually think that got debunked. Some people who are angry are really tough, and they seem to live a long time, don't they? So.
Yeah, and that doesn't seem fair, does it?
Doesn't seem fair.
Well, you also have George Burns, who lived to like 95, and he said his secret was he had a whiskey and a cigar in the morning, and that was his key to long life. So really, what works for one may not work for another.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend trying that one, but
All right, so we talked about the nature, but then what about the heartbreak book? What's in this book?
in this book, I talk about the ways in which my body broke down after my divorce, and my journey to try to figure out what was wrong with me and why this was happening. And then the many sort of science-backed ways that I tried in order to get better, different kinds of therapies. I went into the wilderness for 30 days to try to heal. And eventually, by the end of it, I came out much more whole, and I felt like I had a story to tell.
So that's your story, and you're sticking to it. The other person, do they get a broken heart too?
The person who does the leaving?
The person you divorced from?
Yeah, the person who does the dumping.
Yeah, the dumpster, yeah.
He seems pretty happy.
So he's the dumpster, and you're the dumpy?
That's right. I was the dumpy.
Okay, so does that person have a broken heart, or is he getting away with this?
That's a good question. I think so. There's not as much science about the person who does the dumping. So the neuroscientists that I talk to, they put the dumpy, people like me, in a brain scanner, and they show them a picture of their dumper, and they see what's going on in their brain. There hasn't been as much science looking at the person who does the leaving. And I think there are a lot of different circumstances. I think sometimes people will leave a bad marriage, and then they'll feel much better after they leave it. They'll feel relief, they'll feel safer, they'll feel happier. But I think often the person who does the leaving also feels very guilty. Maybe they've broken up a family, maybe there are kids, maybe they know they hurt someone. So I think there's a real range of emotions there, depending on circumstance. It's not always a clear villain just because you're the one who leaves. Sometimes there's a good reason to leave.
Was there a time before you were in this self-discovery? Was there a time when you would like to give back some pain?
Sure, absolutely. Yes, this is one of the symptoms of heartbreak. Sometimes is this feelings of anger, feelings of some vengeance, right? So these are also natural human emotions. People definitely feel them. And there's a lot of literature and a lot of poetry and a lot of Shakespearean tragedy. Look at Othello, right? People who definitely want to get some payback. Pretty common.
Well, I think the safe way is the biblical way, where God says, "Vengeance is mine; I will repay." I think it'd be better to let Him do it than try to do it, because it seems like every time we go down that road, it backfires. So were you able to withhold that, or did you go ahead and throw some of them darts over that way?
No, I would say I was able to rein that in pretty well, and I have kids in the picture, so I was really careful about wanting to protect them and not speak badly, of their dad. That was really important to me. The tragic thing about vengeance is that unfortunately it's often men acting violently toward women. So we see a lot of interpersonal violence. A lot of broken relationship violence is men, unfortunately, acting that way on women, and it's just one of the toxic effects of loneliness and sort of toxic masculinity that we have in our culture.
Conversely, would there be those women that maybe not be physically abusive to their husbands, but maybe psychologically abusive, and isn't that sometimes worse?
I think emotional abuse
would you call that toxic femininity?
Well, I think there's just, in general, there's a lot of, there are sort of toxic relationship dynamics. Emotional abuse can happen from men or from women, either way, and it's super destructive.
We don't hear much about toxic femininity So I don't know. It seems like it's kind of rigged against the males. Though I got to say, the males have certainly done their part. But these days, it seems like it's an equal opportunity offense, equal opportunity gamesmanship going on around.
Yeah, I mean, emotional abuse can flow both directions, no question.
Okay. All right. Well, Florence Williams, we've been talking about the science of heartbreak. How can people get these books?
Oh, well, they're available, wherever you buy books. And I have a website where you can find out more about specific places to get them and more about the books themselves. And that's just florencewilliams.com.
Okay. Well, we have that.